Hello for the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time, only using the Gospel, tiny part of the Gospel, Matthew 10:37 to 42. And I titled this, He Kissed the Casket. Been sort of on a kick in the last few months on trying to figure out suffering. Why good people suffer. And I guess it came to the head this week because I participated in a funeral for a young man over at Christ the King, 21 years old. He died suddenly. And there's a lot of suffering in love, at least in that funeral. And not only that, but everyday life brings us suffering, and we try to figure it out. Why, Lord? Why? Maybe it's not just because of that young man's funeral, but also in today's gospel. The middle sentence, a compound sentence, Jesus says this: whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. All of this suffering. At the end of this funeral, after Father Preva was a celebrant, I preached and Greg did a eulogy. So much love, but so much suffering. At the end of this funeral, they had 15 pallbearers, young friends from South Carolina, come and celebrated or witnessed this funeral mass. At the very end, when we were all outside and they just pushed the casket into the hearse, one young man, 19, 20, stood in the back of the hearse and placed his hand on the casket, crying, and then reached down and kissed it. Goodbye to his friend. When he kissed it, I almost lost it. Why such suffering so young? What an experience in life. I also have read in Richard Rohr's daily meditation, they sort of stacked up when I was away on vacation, and I read an old one this week also, and it dealt with suffering. And his bottom line of what is suffering is when we are not in control. Not in control. No wonder Christ suffered in the garden, sweat blood. No wonder Christ on the cross screams out, "Why have you forsaken me?" to his Father. And no wonder people suffer when they're about to die. They're losing total control. Well, we describe it in many different ways, and each way says a little bit, I think, but just a little bit. Suffering is letting go of all fear of suffering. When you don't fight it so much and you just experience, it's not as bad as when you fear what's going to happen. Suffering is letting go of all needs in quotes. Power, letting go of power, letting go of prestige, letting go of possessions. It's not easy to let go of anything that we cherish or seemingly we hold dear. Suffering In another way, suffering is letting go of the self. And by that I mean letting go of the small self. Me, myself, and I self. The small self is so important. And to sacrifice that and give that up for another cause, for another person, for another situation, it isn't easy. It's difficult. It's even difficult to know what are our own needs, in quotes, and what are our real needs, not in quotes. And Jesus tells us in today's gospel, whoever finds his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Whether you're that 19-year-old young man crying, kissing the casket with the loss of his friend, or a 99-year-old person dying of cancer, there's suffering. And certainly you're not in control. You're totally about to be out of control. If only we turn our self over, or our small self, to God, suffering is a little bit easier, or a little bit maybe more meaningful, or we see a little bit deeper into salvation through suffering. And Jesus says that if you turn your life over, your little self over, to God for his sake, it's part of conquering the age-all, historical all, mysterious all. Why do people suffer? What do you think? Take that one compound sentence that Jesus says in the gospel and think about it. Whoever finds his or her life will lose it. And whoever loses his or her life for my sake will save it. Not a pleasant subject, suffering. But suffering is part of everyday life. Suffering is part of ordinary time. Really. Have a good day.